colleagues that you think would benefit from listening to this and be watching it, then the link will be available. But yeah, just letting everyone know that we will be recording this. Okay, let's kick things off while we're letting everyone else in. We usually have a few latecomers. So welcome to the third this year, I think, of our Moving Communities Thought Leadership series. And this one is on ageing infrastructure, restore, rebuild, repurpose. And just to set the scene, I'd like to share a key finding from a report that was shared at the Moving Communities Board yesterday. It's a report from London Sport. I thought it was really interesting, linking demographic change to facilities. And in London, they've recognised or realised that there's going to be 10% less children over the next 10 to 20 years, which means 90 schools approximately will be closing in London. The fastest growing demographic population is 65 plus. And just to keep existing demand with that age group, there's going to have to be a 25% increase in the sorts of facilities that that age group want to use. And that's just to stand still in activity terms. Now, that increase cannot be met by new provision alone. And that just shows the importance, really, of not just looking at closing facilities and rebuilding new ones, but we've got to be much more imaginative and innovative in terms of restoring, rebuilding, perhaps the most important one, repurposing. So today's speakers are going to be touching on all of those things. And towards the end, we've got a really great case study from Michael from Belfast, which is a real exemplar, I think, for the sorts of things that we can do, really being imaginative and innovative. Okay, so just to kick things off, done the housekeeping, quick run through of the agenda. My name's Mark Hill, so I should introduce myself. I'm a Director of Active Insight, and we lead within the Moving Communities Consortium on learning development, Marcoms, and all things surveying. I'm going to hand over to Emma Bernstein, the second from Sport England, just to give a brief introduction into Moving Communities. We've then got Kevin Bills, Director of Facility Development, giving an overview of Sport England's approach. Then over to Rachel Fowler, Managing Director of Strategic Leisure, for some great case studies on transitioning from ageing facilities, health, wellbeing hubs. Jack, MD of 4Global, is then going to be talking about data demand and looking how we can, what the data tells us, particularly around integrated facility systems, shaping a more sustainable future. And then I'll be passing over to my esteemed colleague from Loughborough University, Simon Shibley, and he's going to be linking data from Moving Communities to site age and facility performance. So as I mentioned, we've got Michael Kearney, Project Manager, GLL Better, talking about Templemore, Baths, and Belfast's wider leisure transformation programme. So as I say, a great agenda. Always times for Q&A at the end, but if you've got any comments or questions, please use the chat function and I'll be managing that as we go through. Okay, great. So to kick things off, just pass over to you, Emma, for a few slides introducing Moving Communities.
Thanks, Mike. Yep, and good morning, everybody. A huge warm welcome to this webinar, latest in the series from Moving Communities, and it's my job just to introduce myself and the platform that we're talking about today. So for those of you who I haven't met, my name's Emma Bernstein. I'm a Strategic Projects Lead at Sport England, and I've been working on Moving Communities for the last 6 years or so. And what you can see on the screen is our vision for the service. So it's the Sport England run service. We work with really closely a consortium of partners to deliver that. It's led by 4Global, but we also work with Active Insight, Loughborough University, Sheffield Hallam University, and Right Directions to provide what we hope is becoming more and more relevant to the sector and a very much a trusted source of data and insight. You'll see the strapline there. It's populated by, but used by and for the sector, and that's been a really important value exchange for us developing the service over time. And this webinar is one example of how we hope to bring the data to life that we have, really help us understand physical activity opportunities and reduce inequalities. Thanks, Mike, if you're happy to flick on. Just in terms of the platforms itself, we've been actually through quite a significant upgrade over the last quarter to the infrastructure that the data sits on, and it's now moving across from what was 4Global's data hub into a platform called Insight OS. What we've done so far is to translate the Moving Communities Place platform over there. That's data that is about participation opportunities and the context of places, and that could be any place or space where physical activity happens. Doesn't necessarily have to be a leisure centre. But where things all started was the Moving Communities Facilities platform. That was public leisure centre data, and that is in the process of being migrated across. So at the moment we are operating on 2 different infrastructures, but soon to be one, and we will, if anybody needs any links or logins to any of the platforms, then there'll be an email in the chat that you can reach out to, and we can make sure that you're fully up and running. Thanks, Mike. So just my final slide, and I won't go into too much detail because I know the more exciting stuff is to follow, but just a summary of the benefits of what we found using the service for ourselves, but also what we hear from partners, and they fall into kind of 3 key buckets. The first is around data in a single source of truth. Being able to compare apples with apples has been game changing in the way that we can integrate now large data sets from lots of different partners in lots of different situations, and being able to talk about that data with one voice and having that single source. But that doesn't happen without the middle box, and that collaboration piece has been key across Moving Communities users, not just identifying where activity can happen, but around the partners that are delivering that, and then enabling them to understand where there might be opportunity to either talk about the impact of what's already been done, but also talk about the opportunity to provide additional opportunities to support people being physically active. And then the last box, I touched on the word impact. I think for me, one of the unique selling points around Moving Communities has been the opportunity to translate real-time data into real insight, and particularly around social value and driving that change, understanding the wider impact that sport and physical activity has for different populations. So hopefully just a bit of a summary there that helps to locate the service, the benefit that it drives, and it's available to all for free of charge. So please do reach out if you'd like to know more about the access that you can get from your organisational perspective. Mike, I'll hand back to you, if that's okay, just to introduce the next speaker.
Brilliant. Thanks, Emma. So now pleased to welcome Kevin Mills, Director of Facility Development, Sport England. Kevin, you're going to give us an overview of Sport England's approach to infrastructure and capital support. So over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Mike, and hello, everyone. Yeah, I hope you're going to find the webinar helpful and supportive. I'll give a fairly brief overview at a high level of the support and investment from Sport England for this sector, and then hand over to the other speakers. So supporting local authorities and your delivery partners with the immense task of maintaining, improving and developing the leisure facility stock and the services delivered has been the key focus of my team's work over the years, and many of you will have come into contact with either the capital team or others that support your work in your authorities. We've seen significant progress across the country in the transformation of the traditional leisure offer to an active wellbeing service, a transformation which was called for and was highlighted in the Future of Public Leisure report, which all stakeholders within the public sector collaborated on. Our capital investment support has supported local authorities to deliver over 100 new active wellbeing hubs, replacing ageing facilities and improving the service and programmes for local communities to access. In addition to the constant financial pressures which local authorities are under, which challenge both new investment and maintenance of services, we have seen significant external extraordinary pressures too. COVID and the utility cost crisis threaten services, and we were proud to play a role in the support of the sector with the National Leisure Recovery Fund and the Swimming Pool Support Fund. We also recognise the increasing cost that we're currently seeing through the cost of construction and capital borrowing, and are working on alternative investment models for the sector. I'm delighted to say that Sport England will continue to support the sector and has taken the step of identifying investing in ageing facility stock as a key priority area in the next stage of uniting the movement as part of our 5-year plan. This means not only the continuation of the support we have provided to investment into public active wellbeing facilities, but an increase in that support too. We will continue to provide the strategic support through our consultant frameworks to assist local authorities in the development of strategic approaches to its active wellbeing portfolio, to support through options appraisals and business cases, project delivery and design guidance, and service delivery contracts to ensure outcome delivery. We'll continue to support the Moving Communities data platform and develop the use of this as a strategic influencing tool with government and for local use. Moving Communities has created a step change for this sector, providing the evidence base to demonstrate the value of this service locally and nationally. In terms of further investment, Sport England will increase the level of support available to the public sector as part of the 5-year plan, and we are working with government to secure further investment through the spending review. These discussions with the government are progressing well, although changes at number 10 are causing a minor delay in any announcements. I'm hoping we'll see announcements from both Sport England and government in the coming weeks in terms of level of investment. The challenges for this sector won't be going away. They never do, whether this be financial or structural challenges like local government reorganisation, or challenges in meeting changing community needs and addressing inequalities. Sport England remains committed to supporting you to meet the challenges. The investment we can make alongside you is desperately important. It helps make the business cases viable and sustainable. But we know, and you tell us, that it is also the wraparound support which works alongside that investment which is key. The strategic support, the support with investment plans and options, the project delivery support, and the development of the evidence base through Moving Communities to demonstrate the value of the services, that will be continued and enhanced. Colleagues and partners on this webinar will be running through some of that support today. I hope you find it useful, and I hope you've found the overview of Sport England support useful and interesting, and happy to take any questions when we get to the end of this session. Mike, I'll hand back over to you.
Thanks, Kevin. Great background and context. So let's get into some great examples of putting this into practice now. So to start off with, I'd like to hand over to Rachel Fowler, Managing Director, Strategic Leisure. Rachel, many of you know, been in the industry for many, many years, like myself, I hasten to add. So great to finally be sharing a platform with you, Rachel. Over to you to look at how we're putting some of these thoughts and ideas into practice.
Okay. Thanks, Mike. Is the presentation coming up? I have shared it.
Remember, no, we can't see it at the moment. Let me stop sharing my screen and you try again sharing your screen.
Okay, is that coming up now?
Yes, you're live now.
Everyone see it? Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming along today. So what I thought I'd just talk a bit about today really is needs outcomes and ageing assets, because I think one of the first things to say about the ageing infrastructure in this country in terms of leisure facilities is that sometimes it isn't the right thing to refurbish or try and extend it. Sometimes the right thing to do is to replace it, because one of the challenges with the ageing infrastructure is that it doesn't meet the needs of today. And I think the changing needs that we've seen in recent years, the real focus on trying to move inactivity to activity, and specifically the transition to active well-being, and the role that leisure hubs can play in terms of social interaction are really important. And sometimes facilities designed in the 60s or 70s just don't actually have the right layout or infrastructure to provide what's needed today. Today, through the work that we do, we would say that it's less about formal sport and more about activity or physical activity. It's more about multi-purpose and more flexible places and spaces. And it's also about people being able to see into buildings or see around buildings once they're in them, so that things are more visual, inclusive and open. That's what will encourage people to take part. In the past, we've often built buildings with very few windows, for example, leisure buildings, and that doesn't mean that people are always aware that what's going on inside is something that they could be part of. So this is just an example of the Warsop Health Hub, which opened in 2024. I know the cost is eye-watering now, really. Sorry, let me just go back to that. And it certainly wouldn't be that today. But Warsop Health Hub was developed through, first of all, talking to the community and developing the insight that then drove the design. And again, I think that's something that's really important. In the past, we've perhaps tended to just say, we need a swimming pool or we need a sports hall, and not really thought about the shared outcomes that need to be driven by the fact of actually providing these type of facilities. So Warsop is a small parish just outside Mansfield. It's an ex-mining community, very high health inequalities, very high inactivities, and actually there aren't any fit for purpose facilities there, or there weren't before the health hub. What there was before the health hub was an aging dual use facility on a school site, which was in a really poor condition, and it was suddenly closed. So the community had no access to anything. And what we found by doing the insight with the local community and developing it was that they actually wanted a swimming pool, but it wasn't a swimming pool for club swimming. It was a swimming pool for learn to swim and for older people to swim in what they felt was a safe environment. So this facility actually became one of the first leisure local facilities to be developed. It was part funded by Sport England and Towns funding, and hopefully you can see now some of the pictures. It is a small pool. It's a 15-meter pool. It's not a sports hall in the traditional sense. It's the equivalent of 2-court hall space. This facility is packed every day of the week, and it's managed in a quite an innovative model through one of the private sector operators, but also a local community group. And what this facility now is delivering in terms of health and well-being and prevention is absolutely unbelievable. Recently, the Director of Public Health for the area stood in front of it and said every area should have a Warsop Health Hub. So I think the message here is that what was previously in the area was too old and in too poor a condition to actually turn it into what was needed by the community and what is being delivered today. And that's why this new facility was built. And it's also co-located within a park. It's on an active travel route, so all the primary schools, 5 local primary schools, walk towards their swimming lessons. In a similar vein, I'll just skip over some of these facts. In a similar vein, Claycross Active, which some of you may be aware of, opened last year. This is significantly more expensive. When we first saw this facility, again, it was pretty run down. It had no relationship whatsoever with its community. It actually faced away from the town centre, and the entrance to the park wasn't kind of visible from the centre itself. When developing the insight for this centre, again, the messages came back. This is the old centre. The messages that came back were that people wanted something that was very visual, that was very accessible. And one of the key needs that came out was health. This was again a former mining community. It had lost an awful lot of provision in the town, and the hospital, which was next door to the old leisure centre, was completely overcrowded and couldn't deal with all the demands on it. So this became a co-located health hub. Yes, it's got a swimming pool. Yes, it's got a gym. It's got a cafe. It's got soft play, etc. But it wasn't a total new build, because we kept some of the existing sports hall and refurbished that as part of the new build. And this is co-located with midwifery services. Again, you can see some of the pictures there, but this now provides for a community that, again, didn't have access to these type of facilities. So there are people using this like they are in Warsop, who have never been in a leisure facility before, and it's having a massive impact on inactivity and the health and well-being of the local community. The year 1 statistics are just about to be produced, actually, and I think this slide for me says it all. Chesterfield Royal to the midwifery services, that is the kind of facility that we should be providing today, co-located, so people can access health facilities and services alongside physical activity services. Mike, I think I've probably done my 10 minutes, haven't I? So I better stop, but I'm happy to answer any questions or talk about other case studies that I've got.
That's fine, Rachel. I don't think you actually did 10 minutes. So we've had 2 speakers so far that have been under 10 minutes. But that gives me time to ask you a question, actually, if you don't mind. I just wanted to pick up on that community management group for Warsop. Could you give us a little bit more information about that? Really interested how they're involving the community of the management of the facility.
Yeah, sure. So when we developed the original insight, we worked really closely with a local community group that was originally funded through the big lottery called Vibrant Warsop. And they had a really important relationship with the local community. They were a very trusted partner. And so we knew when we got to the stage of kind of developing the facility mix and how the new health hub would work, that they should be involved. At the time, Mansfield District Council was re-procuring its leisure contract. So we made sure that the future management of the Warsop Health Hub was written into that contract, even though it wasn't even built, let alone funded at the time. And then what we developed was an SLA between the appointed operator for Mansfield District Council, who is Serco, and Vibrant Warsop. I'm not going to pretend it's a complete marriage made in heaven, because you've got a commercial operator working with a community group, but the community group bring the people to the centre. They have been responsible for developing the programming. They have 12 hours of free use each week in the centre, and they have brought people to that health hub who've never been in before, and who are now finding that they can use the gym because their long-term health conditions have improved to that extent. Serco deals with all the day-to-day operational stuff, so everything that you would do normally to operate a leisure facility. But as a result of that partnership, there's been funding now come into the hub from health, and there's also a very active kind of development group which involves operation and strategic stakeholders. It is actually working really well. It's just that there are inevitably challenges because you're bringing together two different organisations.
That's really interesting, and it follows on that last webinar. I think it was a GLL site as well. Had some really interesting, innovative ways of involving users in the development of targeted sessions via WhatsApp groups. So I think the more we see these great examples of community, not just involvement or engagement, but actually direct involvement in the management and planning of these things is great.
Yeah.
Rachel, that's brilliant. Thanks for that. And thanks for keeping on time. Some people have asked for slides from speakers. What I've asked them to do, if they want a copy of the slides as opposed to just a link to the whole recording, they'll be messaging you directly. Rachel, if you're happy to share slides, you can do that directly with people. Some great comments and discussions going on in the chat. So if you haven't had a look in the chat function, please have a look over there. There's some really interesting stuff going on. Okay, great. We're on time. Which gives me time to move to our next speaker. So over to Jack Shakespeare, MD for Global. Jack, glad you could make it with us. I think you've come pretty much direct from hospital, so appreciate the effort. I got to come up with one football analogy for this. So it's a bit like Declan Rice just making it onto the pitch at the last minute for the semi-final.
I'm feeling very sorry for myself, Mike. It's not good, but yeah, it's all right. I think your message to me this morning about age was, I think I've got to accept that now.
I wasn't talking about you. I was talking about facilities, Jack. Okay. Okay, Jack, over to you. So unlocking energy savings in public leisure facilities. He's going to use some really interesting data from moving communities.
Great. Thank you, Mike, and thanks, Rachel. Can someone just give me a thumbs up that you can see my screen? Amazing. Yeah, so yeah, thanks again, Mike, and thanks, Rachel. That was a great presentation, and hopefully it flows nicely into these next 10 minutes. So yeah, just to repeat, I'm Jack Shakespeare. I'm the MD at For Global, as Emma referenced at the start, with the lead delivery partner on the Moving Communities contract, and we proudly sit alongside Active Insights, Sheffield Hallam University, Loughborough University, and Right Directions as part of that wider consortium. I'm going to talk to the findings of, so over the next 10 minutes or so, I'll talk to the findings of a pilot project that we are running through Moving Communities, and has become an additional use case of Moving Communities that analyses patterns and trends from bringing together leisure facility utilisation data, so throughput data, so how many people are coming in and out of buildings and where are they going, with energy usage data. So we're bringing those two data sets together we're having a look at what they tell us, and we're having a look at the relationship between the two. As I said, I'm from 4Global. We're naturally partnering on this particular project with Sport England. It's through Moving Communities, and it's through the Swimming Pool Support Fund portfolio. So we're working with leisure facilities that have been in receipt of Swimming Pool Support Fund funding. Just for absolute clarity, we're also working with an organisation called Unify. They are energy efficiency and building management experts. So to 4Global's throughput and participation data expertise, Unify bring that energy usage expertise. And then because you may have heard of this project before, I thought I'd just give a bit of a shout out to Community Leisure UK, so CL UK, and we're working with CL UK at the moment, where we're expanding the sample size and the cohort, and with it the sort of the data size and data set that we're getting more recently, and I'll reference that as part of next steps as well. But they're the main sort of stakeholders. And actually, I need to reference Right Directions. So we're also working with Right Directions, where we're embedding a Quest element to this, where we're including site visits to understand operationally what's happening on the ground. So just to sort of talk to what are we doing, so what the program is. So the purpose of the pilot is to really assess the feasibility of what an integrated real-time energy management system could be, could look like. And that is based on that principle of bringing those two data sets together, utilization data and energy usage data. But it's really looking at building on the foundational understanding of energy consumption across public leisure centres, and things like benchmarks and wider understanding across different facility types that come with it. I've talked to how the program works, so that at the core of it, it really is aligning consumer or customer activity data, so throughput data, with energy and operational data, and the idea then is to provide more accurate energy consumption data through things like bringing those data sets together and improving data collection technologies upon what might already be happening on the ground. And then as far as an approach is concerned, I won't read those bullet points line by line, but I've highlighted the top two because they really sort of underpin it. So the approach here is we really are trying to, and actually it sort of links back to some of the things Rachel was saying, we're really trying to prioritise making existing building systems more efficient before recommending major capital investments. So really making sure that we can make what's already there more efficient. And then that second point I've highlighted is there's a real focus on using operational improvements to reduce overall energy demand first. So really understand what's happening on the ground and leveraging those to reduce energy demand. So I guess in a snapshot, these are the leisure facilities that we're working with as part of this initial pilot. So we're working with 4 facilities that have given us a nice sort of spectrum, or a nice range of facilities that we are working with. So on the left hand side there, we've got a swimming pool in Whitstable in Canterbury, and as we move across the screen there, we can see a range of facilities, from age of facility to size of facility, and the different services and facilities that are included in those sites. So, and the purpose of that again was to obviously work with facilities that are part of the Swimming Pool Support Fund, but also give us a nice range of facilities so we can start to understand where improvements can be made. And what I thought I'd do is sort of give a bit of a snapshot, a bit of an overview of some of the findings that are coming through. To Mike's point earlier, we've got a fuller deck that we can share, but for the purpose of these 10 minutes, I thought I'd just focus on a few slides that give us a bit of a view into the story so far of what we've been finding. So the first slide is really showing us, I guess, two visualizations of those two different data sets. So on the left hand side, you can see our throughput data. So we've just mapped that throughput data that we receive through Moving Communities into that grid. So you can see the darker purple cells are where we're seeing higher throughput, and the lighter the cells get, that's where we start to see throughput decrease. So we can see things that we'd all expect. So high demand in the mornings, and then in the later afternoons and evenings, lower demand in the middle of the weekdays, and then as we look at weekends, we're seeing that higher demand in the mornings, but you can see a dramatic drop off of throughput as we get into the afternoon. If we then sort of scan over to the right hand side, we can see a similar looking grid, but this time we're looking at energy use across those facilities. Again, the darker cells are showing us where energy is being used more, and the lighter cells are showing us where energies are being used less. And again, look, we can see some obvious trends. We can see where energy is being used more when there is higher demand, and that makes sense. But we can clearly see some areas where there is a mismatch between energy consumption and utilization. The most obvious thing that stands out on that grid on the right versus the grid on the left is in the afternoons. On the weekends, we can still see high energy usage, but from a throughput perspective, we're observing lower throughput levels. So clearly a mismatch there, and an opportunity to start to dig into some of the areas as to why that might be happening. Sorry, lost my technology there. And this next slide sort of, I guess, moves us on to our next step in this data analysis. So we've gone from looking at those two data sets in isolation, albeit on one page, to bringing those two data sets together. And here what we've started to create is an energy per visitor sort of grid. Similar setup, so we can see the days of the week on the bottom, and then we can see the times of the day going up the side there. But what we started to do is look at, okay, well, where is energy being used, in comparison to demand? So the green areas are where we can see an efficient use of energy and versus demand. But the darker the cells get, or the darker the cells get, or the amber and the red start to show us where it looks like energy is being used disproportionate to throughput and to demand. And again, as I referenced on the last slide, the most obvious sort of standout is that weekend afternoon area where you can see those darker reds, darker oranges in operating hours. But we're also seeing early mornings and late evenings where energy is being used, where we're not seeing throughput, and times across the week where facilities are open and energy is being used, but usage is very light. So just starts to give us a nice sort of heat map of where energy is being overused compared to throughput. And then when we look at, so we've gone from what we're doing to what we're seeing, and I think this is one of the slides that we've got that enables us to start to look at, well, what might the savings be? So based on where we are seeing energy that's being used seemingly disproportionately to throughput and demand in a facility, then we can start to look at what the savings might be. And our analysis is starting to show that there are potentially large savings, obviously in this case for those 4 pilot sites, based on or through the lens of cost savings. So on the right hand side there you can see prospective cost savings across those 4 pilot sites, and then on the left hand side we can see those prospective carbon savings, really giving us a good view of what those commercial and environmental benefits might be. And then as a bit of a summary slide, and I'll finish on this one. We've tried to sort of bring together the findings so far of this pilot. So I think the headline of the pilot so far is that approximately 30% of energy used occurs when facilities are not in use. and we've sort of broken that down across electricity usage, gas usage, and water usage. The pilot project has also enabled us to identify priority areas and translate those into sort of emerging priority actions. We've got those 3 areas that we've identified in the middle. So we go from operational improvements to behavioural changes on the ground, and then getting to sort of targeted capital investment, using that data to prioritise upgrades where we think and where we are seeing that they will have the greatest impact. And then on impact, what we're able to do then is really start to understand, like I referenced on the last slide, we're really able to understand and start to assess the prospective impact of using this data to start to make those changes, and then start to see those savings on the ground, whether it's through a cost saving and or a carbon saving. In regards to next steps, so we're currently bringing together the pilot final findings and recommendations report, and we expect that to be published this summer. As I referenced at the start, we've increased the sample size of facilities that we're looking at. So we're working with CL UK and CL UK, some of CL UK's members, to increase that sample size. And we're currently in the data collection phase, looking at utilisation data and energy usage data again to start to further refine and increase the robustness of some of those heat maps that you've seen previously. And really importantly, this is informing the development of leisure facility specific benchmarks that will be operational for everybody that uses Moving Communities, that will be operational in the Moving Communities platform later in the year. So again, really starting to sort of refine and pull out that additional use case of people using Moving Communities. Right. I think I don't know whether I'm wildly off 10 minutes, Mike, or not, but I've got across the things I wanted to get across, and I'll hover on this slide if I need to, Mike. But yeah, that's me.
Brilliant, thanks, Jack. No, we're spot on time actually. So 10 out of 10 to all speakers so far. Any questions for Jack? Please use the chat function, and the speakers can check that chat function because people are asking for specific slide decks. That would be really useful as well. But now I'd like to hand over to Simon Shibley, Director of Sport and Excellence and Opportunity at Loughborough University. For those people who aren't aware, Simon recently moved from Sheffield Hallam over to Loughborough, but still very much involved with and helping to drive Moving Communities. Simon, you're going to be talking about linking the customer experience survey and the NPS that we gleaned from that survey, and looking at the relationship between site throughput and Net Promoter Score. So a subject very much close to my heart. I'm definitely going to have some questions for you after your presentation, but over to you, Simon.
Great, thank you, Mike. Good morning, everyone. Mike, can you just tell me that my slides are visible to everyone? Great, thank you. We are a bit pushed for time, so let me pose these questions. Do all the facilities deliver lower usage, satisfaction and NPS? The answers are yes, no and yes. And does refurbishment help close the gap? The only sensible answer is it depends. So if anybody wants to bail out now, feel free to do so. But this thing is very heavily nuanced. So if you want to hear the underpinning story, that's what I'm going to tell you next. So first up, what we've done here is to take advantage of merging 2 data sets. We've got all of the sites that took part in the customer experience survey last year, 592 sites, and we've been able to identify their age by linking them back to the Active Places Power site. And what we're looking at now really is the age of the building in terms of when it was originally constructed. So 3/4, 21 years plus, and younger facilities are relatively smaller in the proportion that they make up. But that's not entirely fair. because many facilities get refurbished. And so what we've got here is on the left-hand side, what you've just seen, and on the right-hand side, what we call the effective age of a site allowing for refurbishment. And you can see that there's roughly, well, there is a third of sites that have been refurbed in the last 5 years, just over a third, 5 to 10 years, and 27%, 11 to 20 years, which leaves only 6% of sites that are 21 years or older and haven't been refurbed. And then just to complete the analysis of the sample, we looked at those 592 centres and looked at the index of multiple deprivation of the location in which they are sited. And we're looking at quintiles here, so fives. So ordinarily, you'd expect everything to be roughly 20%. And if you look at that, it roughly is, apart from a little spike in IMD location 3 and 4. So we've got a reasonable representation of centres from across England. So what effect do the age of facilities have on participation and throughput? What we did here was we took the 7 months of throughput for each facility and reduced it down to what is the average monthly throughput. And so on the left-hand side, the 34,795 average throughput per month is facilities that are less than 5 years old. They then become progressively older until we get to the light blue bars, which is in bold and has the asterisk. And you can see that is 19,089. So the first thing we can say here is that there is a statistically significant difference between facilities 21 years plus relative to the younger facilities. But even though those figures show quite big differences, there's actually no difference between the younger facilities. And then if we convert the throughput into the average monthly number of unique participants, on the far right-hand side, we see 3,127, the lowest bar, and that is significantly lower than facilities of a younger age. So the first thing is, it would appear that facility age has an impact on throughput and the number of unique visitors. And we just have a look at this in a little bit more detail. Remember that figure of throughput, 19,089, and we've broken this down. So if you look at the next column, no refurbishment, those facilities have 38% less usage overall. And weirdly, if you go to the end, facilities that are 21 plus years old and have had no refurbishment, they are 62% below the average. In the middle, whether a facility is less than 5 or 11 to 20 years, you can see it's slightly above or broadly in line with the overall average. So this is beginning to build up an argument that maybe age has got something to do with throughput. If we do the same exercise on participants, we get exactly the same results, that things that have not been refurbed or refurbed 21 years ago, the two extremes, they are well below the average, and those in the middle, less than 5 years to 11 to 20, are either slightly above average or broadly in line. Next up, if we look at the average net promoter score by age of site, overall, across the 592, we have a net promoter score of 25. But as facilities are broken down by age. You can see less than 5 years, we're looking at an NPS of 40, 5 to 10 years, 29, 11 to 20 years, 20. So it's following a nice pattern till you get to 21 years plus, and it's the average. So there is something there which suggests that maybe the age of facilities is linked to the Net Promoter Score. Then if we look at the mean satisfaction with overall visit for the 80-odd thousand who took part in the survey, it comes out at more or less exactly 4. And if you look at the different types of facility, there is no difference, which is perhaps surprising, but also a bit weird. So when we try and sum it all up, the key factors affecting throughput are, most importantly, mixed sites. And the subtlety here is that most of the older sites tend to be small and either dry or either wet. So it's not the site, it's going back to what Rachel was saying about changing needs. It is the offer on site of wet and dry which is driving this. And mixed sites tend to be younger, and that's why effective age of sites is highlighted as one of the significant factors. If you look at key factors affecting the Net Promoter Score, you can see that they are all service attributes, and they're almost all in the same order. So it's value for money and cleanliness, which we've been banging on about since about 2000 when we started the National Benchmarking Service. So 6 quick takeaway messages. The answers to the questions, yes, no, yes, it depends, but it's nuanced. Throughput and unique visits are related to facility age, but Net Promoter Scores are higher in new builds and recent refurbishments. Again, but overall satisfaction with visit is not related to building age. And here's the kicker. It is the nature, dry, wet and dry, or dry only, and the size of facilities that are key factors. Mixed facilities work best, have higher throughput, and bigger facilities are also better. And it's the smaller facilities which tend to be the older facilities. And finally, the Net Promoter Scores are driven by service attributes. Now, the key takeaway message that sums up all of this is that correlation, things that are related, and causation are not the same. So let me finish with an example. If the wind is blowing and you hang your washing on the line, the wind will cause your washing to dry. If you hang your washing on the line, that won't cause the wind to blow. So on that deep philosophical note, I'll leave it.
Thank you, Simon. I was going to ask you a question, but after that metaphor, an example, I'm too flabbergasted, I think, to ask any questions. So, I can see Jack shaking his head there as well. I was just going to make a very quick point, and I'll be happy to discuss this further in the chat. But one of the interesting things, being a very keen fan of NPS over the years, is the difference there between the satisfaction and the NPS. With NPS showing differences relating to age facilities, but satisfaction doesn't. As you said, that's a little bit weird, but just to remind everyone that NPS and satisfaction are not the same. The whole key thing about NPS is that it's a measurement of loyalty as well as satisfaction. Perhaps even more importantly, it's the likelihood to recommend. And that likelihood to recommend, it's really interesting that is more affected by age facilities than mere satisfaction. So if anyone wants to debate that further, we can do so in the chat. But I thought that was really interesting. And as you say, very nuanced points. So thanks for that, Simon. I really enjoyed that. Okay, we're pretty much on time now. Let me introduce our final speaker. I'd like to introduce Michael Kearney from project manager GLL Better. Michael, I've seen your presentation and it looks really interesting. Great example of using leisure as transformation in many ways. So over to you, Michael.
Thanks, Mike. I'll just try and share my screen. If you could just give me a verbal that that's coming through, okay? Yep. Okay. Good morning, all. Thanks to Mike and Moving Communities for inviting me to speak today. My name is Michael Kearney. I am project manager with GLL. For those that don't know, we are a worker-owned cooperative, a social enterprise operating over 380 leisure facilities and libraries across the UK, including Belfast Leisure Centres in partnership with Belfast City Council. As part of my role, I've had the privilege of working on delivering new leisure facilities as part of Belfast's £105 million leisure transformation programme. So really supporting projects from concept and design through to delivery, and then also measuring the impact they have in communities once they open. So today I'd like to share how through this programme, leisure really has become far more than a public service. It has become a catalyst for regeneration, community cohesion, and civic pride in Belfast. Some of you may recognise some of these photos if you've ever visited, but I think to understand why the leisure transformation programme in Belfast has been so significant, I think it's important to understand the wider political context, how the city of Belfast has developed, and why Belfast has a uniquely large leisure estate. When most people think of Belfast today, I hope they picture a vibrant and ambitious city. They think of tourism, major events, investment, university, sporting success. But Belfast hasn't always looked like this. Only a few decades ago, it was a very different place. Built on manufacturing, shipbuilding, the city was shaped by decades of conflict known as the Troubles. Communities really became physically divided. Investment slowed in the city, and many public buildings and infrastructure aged alongside the communities they served. And as communities became increasingly segregated through the Troubles, Belfast developed an extensive number of leisure centres to serve those individual communities. Thankfully, though, the peace process fundamentally changed Belfast's direction. Investment returned, universities have expanded, tourism really has flourished, and confidence in the city has grown over the last 30 years. With that being said, Belfast rapidly changing, much of its leisure infrastructure remained rooted in a previous era. So an aging leisure stock, which I'm sure this is can be replicated across many cities in the UK, but unlike comparable cities, Belfast has retained a large number of leisure centres as a legacy of the Troubles, and many of them had the same mix of facilities, so the traditional mix of leisure facilities. Architecturally, also, they reflected the priorities of the time: robust, practical, inward-looking, not very welcoming. It was really function over experience. And by the mid-2010s, many had become expensive to maintain, operationally inefficient, and no longer capable of meeting expectations of this new city and supporting the health ambitions of future generations. The challenge was no longer to replace aging buildings, it was rethinking leisure and what it should look like in modern Belfast. In response, Belfast City Council launched a citywide £105 million transformation programme, really revolutionary for the city. The ambition wasn't simply to replace leisure centres, it was to redefine leisure as an essential civic infrastructure. The programme was guided by a number of principles. You see some on the screen. So we set out to improve health and wellbeing, reduce inequalities, create more inclusive, welcoming facilities, and provide, crucially, a more financially sustainable service moving forward. So we weren't simply replacing buildings, we were redesigning a public service. One of the key principles of the programme was a balanced investment across Belfast. So 6 new facilities have been delivered across Belfast. Each of them have been designed with their own unique identity and offer, which has been crucial. From water slides at Andersonstown to sensory provision at Brook, to a restored heritage site at Templemore Bass, which we'll look at in a bit more detail. We were creating destinations rather than competing facilities, encouraging people to travel across the city and experience the best that each had to offer. Architecturally also, you can see a massive difference. Open facades, natural light, welcoming environments, flexible community spaces. All this helped create buildings that felt accessible, safe, crucially, and inclusive. Architecture really had to become part of the experience. And I suppose perhaps nowhere demonstrates that more than Templemore Baths. So we focus in on this centre as one of the projects. It was originally built in 1891 following the cholera pandemic, and it's the only surviving Victorian baths on the island of Ireland. And it's one of Belfast's most significant civic buildings. For generations, it was somewhere people could wash, learn to swim, feel part of a community before closing and falling into disrepair. Rather than demolish it, the ambition was something greater. It was to preserve an important part of Belfast's heritage. So the newly refurbished Templemore Baths is far more than a restored Victorian building. It's a journey through Belfast's past and its future. Visitors, when you visit, hopefully some of you have or will in the future, experience the history of the baths through beautifully restored interactive heritage spaces before seamlessly transitioning into a modern leisure facility with 25-metre pool, modern gym, spa and cafe. So the project really has gave this historic landmark a new purpose. As with any conservation project, as I'm sure many of you know, the project can be significantly complex. So many challenges were come across during the rebuild process, from conservation requirements, extensive survey requirements, heritage fund conditions, unforeseen structural issues, and of course COVID was in the middle of this. But perhaps one of the biggest challenges was managing multiple stakeholder interests that were involved in the project. And the success really depended on the collaboration between specialists, designers, contractors, operators, the council, JLL, and the local community. Happy to say that since we've opened in 2023, there's been a huge impact on the local community. So since the opening, we've had over 1 million visitors through the facility. Families come to learn, swim there. Schools from all over the city visit every week. Community groups from across Belfast meet. The cafe is a hub for the local community, and the exhibition attracts tourists and locals alike. To better explain, and I'm hoping this works, with a short video, which I'll play. So there's more Belfast accents in here, which you'll hear.
This area has been deprived of this sort of facility now for some time, so there's been a great time, and it's just finally great to get people in the door. It's been really fantastic, really positive. People are coming in, they're telling you the stories of how they learned how to swim here. Some people telling you that they were born in the hospital, just where our new pool's situated now. So it's been really, really positive.
Upstairs, the gym, we have a brand new BioStrength system. We run a lot of classes where you can kind of go from one machine to the other, and it will track the progress through all of it.
I grew up in this building. I've done my swim lessons here, and seeing the building come back to life, it's just really good to get like the historic side of it and remember all the memories of it as well.
Hopefully that worked and you could hear that okay, but it'll give you a flavour of the facility. And if any you get the chance to visit, it really is one to visit. It's just one of the projects that has contributed to the wider transformation programme, and some of the output is on the screen now. So you can see from some of those figures, really participation has been fundamentally changed in the city. We've seen over 3.5 million visits last year to our centres. Membership has more than tripled. Swimming lessons have dramatically increased. Our health referral programme continues to grow, improving people's long-term health outcomes. We've created hundreds of jobs through the facility to support economic regeneration across the city. And for me, perhaps, I know we're getting close to time, but for me, perhaps one of the most remarkable outcomes isn't the membership or the visits, but it's measured in movement. So you think back to some of the slides which we've seen at the start. Many people remained in their own communities through the Troubles, but what we're seeing through today's data, and you see in the maps, we're demonstrating that our facilities now reach people from all across Belfast and indeed right across Northern Ireland. The two at the bottom, Templemore on the right, Ballysun, which is one of the older stock, shows that for Templemore, a lot of the new builds, really community barriers are being broken down. People are travelling from all sides of the city, and where you see Ballysun, it's very much heavily concentrated in those areas. So there's still a challenge there, but we're really proud to see that we're having those wider societal benefits. Just in closing, so when we started the journey, many people believed we were just replacing leisure centres and ageing infrastructure, but looking back, we've actually done far more than that. We've preserved international important heritage. We've created healthier communities. We've regenerated neighbourhoods. We've improved customer experience and expectations of what public leisure can be. And we've helped bring people together in a city that knows the importance of shared spaces. So leisure is now far more than a place that just to go swim and use a gym. In Belfast, it really has become a catalyst for regeneration, community cohesion and civic pride. And hopefully I'm still within time.
Thanks, Michael. That's absolutely brilliant, and yeah, really interesting story. And I think for me, the most powerful point was actually that last slide, which showed people moving. Yeah, that really shows the power of leisure to transform in many ways, doesn't it? Okay, just to bring things to an end, then final slide, we'll let people go just a couple of minutes over. If anyone's got any feedback at all before you leave, any suggestions for improvement, if you like format, any changes. Next webinar, we're going to try something slightly different. At the end of the webinar, we're going to add on an extra 10 minutes perhaps for some workshop sessions, break people into groups with speakers for a little bit more time and in-depth chat about their individual areas. So that's the development for next time. The next webinar, early shout out for that. At the moment, we're planning that for 13th of October at 11 AM. People seem to like this morning time better. And if anyone's got any ideas on any contributions that you might like to make, if you've got some brilliant examples of case studies like the ones we had today, feel free to drop a note into that chat box for me before we go as well. We won't take any Q&A now. We'll have plenty of discussion, questions and answers in the chat box. So thank you everyone for attending, and a big shout out for all the speakers. Great lineup today and some really good information shared and contributing to this concept for leadership in the sector. So thanks everyone and have a great rest of the day.